I'd like to share with you the genesis story of the 100 to 4 million in 2 years. A client gave two experts in South Africa 500,000 each to see in 5 years' time who's going to give him the best returns. I immediately took on that challenge. Based on the 500,000, I'm going to outperform them with at least 100%. In fact, the best fund manager in the world. But instead of putting in 500,000 Rand, in other words, taking a risk of 500,000, I'm going to start with 100 Rand. And then within the first year, take it the 100 Rand to 500,000 so that I could start with the challenge. And eventually I want to see how close I can get to 20 million. Why is it that I could immediately say I'm going to take on a challenge starting with only 100 Rand? The origin of that story goes back to 1987. In 1987, I was learning how to become a certified financial planner. I could see that when I looked at my rich clients, that what they were doing were the opposite to what I've been learning at that stage. In other words, retirement annuities, unit trust, fixed deposit, pension fund, provident fund, the normal stuff. And the basis of their wealth was mostly in property. So I wanted to know more about property and I had to figure this out. But in the process, I've learned a lot of things that I'd like to share with you because maybe it can help you. One of the things was that a property, for example, has got 27 variables. And these variables, the moment that you start stacking them onto one another, they start to show you that you need less money. In other words, the money that flows out of your pocket, your surplus that you have to put into that property becomes less. And therefore the growth is going to go up. Now this was 100% against this that I've learned. I've learned that the higher the risk, the higher the growth. You must have money in order to make money. And while I was testing 133 properties, looking at it and put it through the program with different permutations, I discovered that with property it doesn't work that way. It's the lower the risk, the higher the growth. And on the 134th property, it gave me an error. And I couldn't figure that out until I figured out, but you cannot divide by a zero. And nowhere in these 27 variables, especially when it comes to cash flow and stuff like that, were there any negative outflow. In other words, there's no deposit, there's no monthly shortfall, there's no repairs and maintenance, and there's no money that I had to pay. The property literally paid for all of this self. But I could not get my mind around it for the simple fact that I was conditioned that you can get a 10 and a 15 and if you're lucky a 20% growth. And that you must have money and that you have to take risk and all of that stuff that goes with it. So because of that and because I saw this in terms of this program, I decided not to buy that property for the simple fact that I knew that somewhere, something I do not understand what it is that's going on and how it really works. But that changed. By the way, that property was in the market for more than 2 years. So there's a lot of people that already looked at the property. And because of that, I thought, well, someone must have picked this up. I can't be so lucky that I'm the only one that picked this up. But I was on my way from Krugersdorp to Rustenburg. And I was driving through this orange orchard, a huge on both sides. It's not there anymore, but at that point in time, it was massive. And as I was driving, I had a thought, how is it and why is it that this specific farmer has got this massive farm and other people have got 10 or 20 orange trees? And then I thought, where does it all start? It starts with the seed. So what's the potential of that seed? That seed's potential is to become a tree that's going to bear fruits. Now, if you take the fruits and you collect all the seeds and you do this process over and over, in a couple of years' time, you'll have an orchard like that. Maybe 10 years or maybe 20 years. And then I thought, okay, but why is it that the others do not have it? And to unlock that potential that's within, because if that orange falls onto the ground, the chances are almost zero that a new little tree is going to grow, even though there may be 5 seeds within that orange. So I knew there had to be another aspect. And I discovered that that was skills. In other words, this farmer had more skills than the other farmers. And then it's almost like the light bulb came on. I realized it because I've gone through all the PT to discover the 27 variables and then start practically apply that by analyzing 133 properties. And in the process, discover that each and every variable is actually a risk. And that each and every risk, I can gain the skills and learn the skills in order to offset that risk before I actually buy the property. In other words, before I buy the property, I can identify the risk or the potential risk. And if I've got the skills, that's all teachable, learnable, I can know before that problem happens. I know how to handle that problem. So suddenly it's not a risk anymore. But it's because of my skills. And that farmer is so successful because he's got more skills and maybe drive than the rest of the people. And right then and there, I decided I'm going to buy this because this is what I want to do with my life. And I bought that property. Needless to say, that was the beginning of this process. But then I was so convinced and so chuffed up with myself that I wanted to convert every single person. So whenever I saw a client, I would say to them, listen, I've cancelled my endowment policies, my retirement annuities, I cancelled my unit trust, the whole story. I was forced to continue with my pension fund at that point in time because I worked for Old Mutual. But I'm going to invest in property, and this is the program that I'm using, and this is what I've done already, and this is the outcome of this. But needless to say that the majority of people thought that I was crazy. Okay? Why go through all this trouble? For the simple fact that they could not understand this idea that once you've determined your financial freedom growth rate, you have to find an investment where your investment growth rate, your IGR, is bigger than your FFGR. And at that stage, only property could give that to me. No unit trust, no stock, nothing over a 10-year period could give me the growth that I needed in order to be financially free. And by the way, that was 55% at that stage. So I tried to convince them, and no one wanted to buy into this idea, except for a specific client. When I showed him, after I've done, I believe in life insurance, I believe in contingency planning, I believe in estate planning and stuff like that, but that's got to do with life cover and with risk cover. And that's what I started focusing on. So when I got to this client, I said to him, this is what I'm doing. I do not have endowment policy. I do not have a retirement annuity. I do not have unit trust. I've cashed that all up. And I explained to him the property story. And he entertained me and he said, can you do analysis on my house? Which I did. Within 5 minutes, I told him what was the growth on his house. And by the way, it was better than his unit trust. Then he asked me a question and he said to me, honest, is it possible? He's been around about 15 years at that stage in his business. But he said to me, he started like 11 months earlier, a brand new business. If I can perhaps calculate what's the growth on that investment, only to find out that it was an infinite growth. In other words, there's no money that he's put in because he's got the skills. And he used the existing skills that he had with his current business at that point and apply that in a brand new business. And this is the beauty about skills. The moment that you've got the skill, no one can take that skill away. And you can apply the skill in your business, you can apply it in your relationship, you can apply it in your health, you can apply it spiritually, you can apply it with your investments. It is unreal the moment that you understand the potential that's within you. But you have to unlock the skills. You have to take the responsibility to put in the time and the effort in order to be able to do it. Now, once I saw that he could start a business with no money, that opened up the world to me. Because that evening when I got home, I said to Tanya, there is no reason on this planet Earth why anyone should ever be poor. No reason. Except for themselves. They are the reasons that they're going to stay poor. We're going to become multi-millionaires, okay? Multi-millionaires. And we're going to retire before the age of 40 and do whatever we want to do, where we want to do it, how we want to do it, with whom we want to do it, without worrying about money. That's basically what I said to Tanya. And the reason for that is simply, if I can start a business, in other words, I can take an income skill, convert that into a business skill. The business skill is going to give me so much money that I can start gaining the investment skills, and by applying the investment skills, my money grow faster than my financial freedom growth rate. And by simply doing that, I can start generating money. In a year's time, I can go to the bank, if I want to go to the bank, and say, this is the income that I derived from my spin-off business. In other words, I'm still doing what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. But if I spend 2 or 3 hours per day in starting a new business and gaining the skills around that business, and that business gives me enough income, I can use that as security to buy another property. And that made so much sense to me that I can do that literally within a year. Or I have the option to say, okay, but I'm going to use this as more security, or maybe pay off debt, whatever the situation. But now suddenly I'm not stuck with one source of income. I'm suddenly gaining the skills and applying the skills that I've gained with a property. I can apply all of those skills to a business. And I've seen that that is what happened there. And that's how it started. So it starts with a seed. Now, what do I want you to do if you are serious to become a wealth creator? And by the way, a wealth creator is a person that knows how to create, to grow, to protect, and to enjoy their wealth. And the way to do that is to understand that what risk is. Now, Warren Buffett says it best. Risk is when you do not know what you're doing. In other words, as soon as I take my money and I give it to someone else, it means that I do not know how to grow my money. I do not know what the risks are involved. Plus, I've got no control over the risk. I've got no control. So in '87, when I discovered this, it made so much sense to me that I decided I'm going to learn the skills. I want to be in charge of my own destiny. I do not want to rely on someone else or some organization to tell me what I can do and can't do. And I'm so glad that I took that responsibility, because that is where it all started. So when I saw that, let's call it advertisement on YouTube, where a client gave them 500 and they said it's a 500K challenge, I immediately, without knowing how I'm going to do it, I sent out an email to my database. And I said to them, by applying the wealth creator strategy, which is the intelligent use of limited resources to go from where you are to where you want to be in the shortest possible time with the least amount of risk, I'm going to outperform these guys, and I'm only going to start with 100 Rand. Now, there's a lot of people that do not believe it, but the auditors are busy with the financials to prove that this is what it is. And you can't argue against the results. So this is what we need to do. We need to, first of all, change our mindset. That is the most difficult thing for the average person to do, because we are set in these comfort zones that we've got. We believe the things that we believe in. And through our reticular activated system, the way that the brain operates, we're going to delete, distort, generalize, and add information to line up with this that we believe. In other words, if I believe that I must have money to make money, and I haven't got the money, I'm not going to get ahead. If I believe that I must take risk, I'm going to take very risky investment, because that's my belief system. Your belief systems will always be validated by that you believe, and that becomes then your reality. And that is why it was so difficult for me in '87, learning how to get a CFP qualification, and at the same time seeing that what I'm learning is a lie. It's based, I'm talking about the investment portion. I'm not talking about the life insurance portion and the risk portion. I'm talking about the endowments and the unit trust and the retirement annuities and the pension fund and the provident fund. All of those things that they want to dish up to us, that this is a great investment. It's not an investment, my friend. And the returns that you're going to get will never put you in a position to, within 5 to 10 years, to be financially free. And I was desperate at that stage. So that was my intent, to retire before I'm 40, which luckily we could do at the age of 37. But it's about the skills, and it's about taking the responsibility in order to do that. But here's the trick that I want to share with you today. It's all about the seeds. You see, your money is the seed that you're going to use. But the trick is not to accumulate seeds. The trick is to take that seed and convert it into a tree, into an asset. It's the asset that you want. It's not the money. Because the moment that you've got an asset, it's going to pump seeds for year in, year out. This is the beauty about this that we're doing. And the only way that you can do that is to have the skills. And by having the skills, you just take an idea. So when I heard this 500K challenge, immediately I said, okay, even though I do not have an idea, I know how to get an idea. Because there's a process in the Rainmakers startup business. We go through a process called ideation. In other words, even if you've got no idea, how can you get an idea and test that idea before you start, before you invest a cent into that, to see if this is viable? And then, how do I present that through a prototype? So you do the canvas, you do the prototype, and then you collect the money before you actually have to develop the product. This, my friend, is exactly what I've done. This is how I've started every single business. So the moment that I want to buy a property, I first have the idea, the intent. Okay, this is how much cash I need. And then I start reverse engineer that to create an idea. I use the ideation, which is a skill. Once we've got the canvas, now I start applying and I say, okay, how can I turn this idea the fastest way into income? Which normally will be to use a skill that I've got. We call it high income skills. And once I've got that going, how do I put it into a system so that it becomes a system? In other words, now it becomes a business. And once I've got the business, where do I use the surplus of the business in order to maximize and optimize my growth without taking any risk? Because my initial risk that I've set myself was 100 Rand. And this is all there is. But now we need to change our mindset first. So how can you do that? You have to go through the proof. There are 2 ways, 3 ways, maybe 4, maybe a ton. But one way to do it is to see if someone else has done it. I know, for example, that Warren Buffett started with $100. I know that Anton Rupert, Johan Rupert's dad, started that empire with £100. And if you read the stories, you'll see that there was no need for them to pledge that £100 or that $100. There were ways around that, if they had the skills. And by the way, I know Warren Buffett had the skills, but he definitely structured it this way. And that's why I structured this deal with 100 Rand. Now, I want you to go and have a look in nature and see that in the universe, everything works in terms of multiplication. It's got nothing to do with fractionalizations where you put in 10 and you get out 1, if you're lucky, in a year's time, 10% on that. And you have to take all the rest. So the moment that you've got the skills, you use your internal self, your skills, you become resourceful and you convert that, whoops, into money. And now you've got the money and you can use the money as energy to multiply that money, where you get a 300, 400, 500%, even though it's based on a very small principle. But those small wins are going to start adding up so that the 100 Rand can turn into 3-4 million in a matter of 2 years. So just go and have a look at the trees that you've got in your garden or the plants and start counting the seeds. So one plant can give you 10 or 12 seeds. Or it can give you, like a cycad, 300 seeds. But sometimes you've got 3 cones on that cycad, which means it's about 900 seeds. But those seeds, if it's in a garden, the chances that it's going to turn into cycads is basically 0, unless you pollinate it, unless you go through the process by having the skills. And this is the way that the universe operates. But the universe always expects you, if you want to turn it into a business, to add income skills. In other words, the skill to become proficient in that you do. You first need to learn that. But everyone can learn the skill because all skills are transferable and teachable. And therefore, we can learn them. And we can speed up this whole process by getting and finding the right mentors. So it's a very simple process. There's a fish, the sunfish. Do you know that when it's spawned, it's got 300 million eggs that it releases? 300 million. One single fish, 300 million. This is the growth that you can get, but we do not believe that we can get a 300 million% growth. One of the challenges I've taken on a couple of years ago was to prove on Facebook that I can get a 2 billion% return on investment within a 2-year period. The whole process is documented by just using one skill. So this is the basis that I've used and that I'm going to use in future. Whenever I've got a goal, I calculate that goal back to what growth do I need. We call it the financial freedom growth rate. And then I see, okay, how can I apply my resourcefulness, my skills, by attaching this to a measurement where I can measure this in order to measure the results. Because to become successful, I need to get the right information in the right order for the level of the game that I'm at. And then I have to do it to measure the results, which forms part of the formula for riches. That result is your IGR. So if that IGR, your investment growth rate, is bigger than your FFGR, my friend, and by the way, the stuff that I'm sharing with you now, you will not find that any financial institution, any educational system, they will never mention this to you, because then you've got full control. So I want to have full control over the risk, and I want to have full control over the growth that I can get. And that is the reason why I can take on a challenge and say, I am prepared to take on this challenge. I'm prepared to do an audit on that and prove that by applying the wealth creator strategy, which is the intelligent use of limited resources to go from where you are to where you want to be in the shortest possible time with the least amount of risk. And I will outperform these gurus by not investing more than 100 Rand. In other words, my risk was 100 Rand. The client's risk was 500,000 per expert. It's a massive difference, but it means that you have to take the responsibility if that is something that you want to do in your life. Now, by far, the majority of people don't want to do it. They don't want to take the responsibility so that they can blame someone else in the event that they're not successful. They do not want to put in the time and the effort to learn the skills. They think it's impossible, simply because every expert are going to tell you they had to study 4 and 5 years and gain 40 years of experience in order to be able to do it. But it's a lie. You can literally get the basics, for example, in property, in less than a week and get the same performance that I'm getting, exactly the same growth that I'm getting. This is a power on condition that you take the responsibility to learn the skills. So if you're interested, and maybe I should say if you are committed to change your life, then somewhere on this page, below this video, I think, you'll find a link to invite you to one of my free live masterclasses. Attend that, but only if you're committed. And then from there, you're going to have access to a live question and answer session where I'll do everything in my power to be able to help you. And the best part about this whole thing is I'm going to offer it for free. So that is if you're serious. And then also follow the 500K playlist in YouTube to see what we're doing and how we're doing and the tips that we are giving. Because by applying that, my friend, your life will change. So thank you so much for your time. If you found value in it, what about giving me a like? And if you're not subscribed to this channel, please do so. I'll appreciate that. And maybe in the process, we can spread the word. If you think I'm crazy, tell me. Honest, Womhannes. Nowadays, my honorary title seems to be Womhannes. Womhannes, you are crazy. But come and have a look at how a crazy Womhannes can do the things that people that has got 40 and 50 years of experience with all the qualifications, what they cannot do. Simply because they're part of the system. And as long as they're part of the system is lying to us in order to keep the average person in place. In other words, let's call it poor. Now, no one wants to be poor, but yet, when we look at what people are doing, you're going to see the result, why it is that they're not getting ahead in life. And the whole system, the financial system, the educational system, the religious system, all these systems are against the average person. So if you want to break free and you are prepared to think outside the box, and you are prepared to find an alternative to this that you are doing at the moment. You know, Einstein says insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. We all want to have that growth, but we keep on doing the stuff that cannot give us that growth. This may be your opportunity. Thanks so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.